It's heartbreaking and very disappointing that people that we expect they will be protecting our lives and properties are the same people who are taking our lives. And at least the least they could have done was to arrest these people if truly these people committed a crime. But it's so sad. People before curfew hours were arrested and were killed gruesomely for nothing. In fact, the media, government, and all responsible citizens of Ghana should take up this issue and make sure that the military, whom we thought were the ones who were going to protect our lives, are rather the ones killing us, should be taken out of Bawku. They should be taken out completely. We don't trust them anymore. This is not the first time. This is the fourth time that these incidents have happened within COSAG, and their target is always against COSAG. Why should you protect the minority? It is just obvious and clear that the military has no solution to the Bawku conflict. Please, they are trading with our lives, and that is our fears now. They are trading, and I repeat it, they are trading with our lives.
We communicate to whoever that is responsible for them. Is it the President of the Republic of Ghana? Is it the Vice President? Is it the Minister for Security whatsoever? They should take them away from Bawku. We don't need them. Yes. Take them away from Bawku. We don't need them. Leave us to our fate. It is our land. We can protect ourselves. We don't need them. They are fighting for the man-process. They tell us in our faces that they are protecting the few. They are protecting the minority. It means the handful of people in Bawku claim they own Bawku. You are protecting them. How come they own Bawku?
Big stories, and of course, that is the conversation. Bawku is boiling again, simmering tensions there. In recent times, that first incident, including a lecturer losing his life, 3 people affected, 3 people killed, and then over 5 of them injured and in hospital receiving treatment. After that, the military had some tussle with another group of people. We cannot establish yet whether they had any hand in that previous action, but these 3 were killed. And the military suggests that these people engaged them in fire, and they returned fire, and that was the result. Joining us for a conversation this morning, we have Professor Kwesi Enning, and he is a security consultant. He provides bespoke services in risk assessment, analyses, and forecasting. He joins us for a conversation on this. Prof, a very good morning to you, and since it's the first time we're interacting this year, Happy New Year.
Well, let me say a very happy New Year to you too, and a very good morning.
Right. I don't know how good the morning is, though, because here we are again. I mean, Prof, how many times have we not had these conversations? Bawku and everything happening in between. But to start off the conversation, I'd like to get your general security assessment of what is happening in Bawku. We know it's been going on for decades, 5 plus decades. What do you make of what is happening in Bawku and the latest incidents that we've seen?
Well, I think what is happening in Bawku is unfortunate, and I want to express my condolences to those who have lost their lives and to those who are hurt. But it doesn't come as a surprise. This will not be the last time. Actually, it's going to escalate dramatically, depending on how we respond to the latest challenges. Bawku has been allowed to fester over the decades, and the approach first to understanding what is driving the crisis, the way it may have transformed over time, how outsiders and conflict profiteers may be exploiting the challenges and diverting attention from the critical issues at stake, and leading those who ought to respond in directions that do not touch the core of the problem. Bawku is fascinating because it exposes the shallowness of how we are looking at this problem. So it's been an ethnic conflict between two major groups. It's been, relating to chieftaincy, identity, access to land, but also, of course, if the stories that we are hearing about the latest incidents, access to military-style weaponry. Now, almost every category of explanatory framework that I have provided, were we to disaggregate them, leads to even more confusion, but certainly gives us a sense that we are not tackling this problem the way that it ought to be tackled. Unfortunately, when crises do happen and emotions get involved, then disentangling it becomes very difficult. There is another factor that we need to understand. And that factor is that over time, and this is what I have mentioned earlier on tangentially, is that social media is playing a role that sometimes, or more often than not, is not very helpful. Because the speed with which false information, the help of AI, manipulated visuals can be placed in the public domain, that of course, ordinary people will accept, propagate, and then also forward, means that we need not only to continue the talk, but to sit down and honestly say, what are the challenges? Where have we failed? And are we willing and prepared to take the bull by the horn? Until we do that, and I'll repeat, this probably may be just the beginning. You and I will have a couple of conversations about this challenge if we don't tackle it right before the December 7th elections.
And that's exactly what I found interesting that I was about to get back to. You say, this could just be the beginning. It won't be the last time. You said that initially, and you said this situation could escalate dramatically or drastically over time. Are you saying that possibly, and I spoke to Dr. Doki, or Doke the other day, and he also mentioned that this has become intractable. Do you see from where you said that it has become that intractable?
Actually, I had a really very clever graduate student who wrote a dissertation and did a fantastic piece of work on conflict intractability, but did not use Bawku as the case study. Bawku has become intractable not because of the Mampusis and the Kusasis, neither because of contestations around identity and the chiefship. They are all part of the mix. But I think we need to bring a political economy analysis to this. And that is why I asked your producer to get me a map looking at the whole northern stretch of Togo to the northern stretch of Ghana and to the southern part of Burkina Faso. And to ask ourselves, what are the types of criminal activities, transnational organized criminal activities that are taking place if your producer can put the Kesa, from Kunjuari to Senkase, all the way to Pusiga on the Ghana side, and then to Boko, and then to Bolgatanga. The southern part of Burkina Faso also provides a wonderful opportunity for criminal networks, to engage in petrol, fertilizer, maize, soya bean, plastics. If we take the cursor up a little bit to the middle part of Burkina Faso, there is a city there called Fada Nguma, the single largest cattle market in West Africa. The criminal networks are still able to shift cattle across the whole of the sub-region and also into Ghana. The criminal stock exchange that manipulates the prices of fertilizer, petrol, diesel, and plastics are the people that we need to identify, understand their thought processes, and then to say, how do these people probably manipulate already existing tensions, creating havoc and loss of lives, purely to allow them to engage, in their business and criminal enterprises.
Right.
My argument is that whilst these underpinning...
And we're currently looking at Fada Nguma now on...
So
on
if you see where Fada Nguma is, and this is where sometimes I'm increasingly also challenging this notion of the violent extremists coming down south to the coast. If we see where Fada Nguma is, that is supposed to be in real hardcore violent extremist territory. But the cattle market is actually booming. And there are studies showing the different directions through which cattle from Fada Nguma and other places come across the sub-region. So my suggestion is that were we to have another look and to invite counterfactual interpretations, I would suggest to those who will sit around the table to look at the economies of scale involving these commodities that I have mentioned. Who are the people involved? Their networks in Boko. Because it's easy to manipulate people to take actions that they themselves are not aware of in terms of its multiplier effect. And I would argue very strongly that the unfortunate incidences happening in Boko are more related to the external manipulation by criminal networks and big criminal networks, because the cost of fertilizer, smuggled fertilizer alone out of Ghana, it's about 150 million cedis annually. So if you add all the other stuff, then we are looking at sums of money that people will manipulate any conflict to allow them to continue with their trade. So we are looking at this, I would argue, totally wrongly.
I'd like to find out from you, now that you are talking about Fada Nguma and other places from Burkina Faso. Of course, now it's complicated because even if you move away from Bawku and you get to some other areas, Sisala, I think Sisala West, among other areas, that also feed into, if I'm getting the place right, that also feed into Burkina Faso, have a border. You would realize that some people even cross over from Ghana to go to Burkina Faso to seek healthcare. And some of them also smuggle different items. If you look at that area, it's a huge maize production area. I'm not talking about Bawku, I'm talking about the Sisala West area.
Sure.
And with all of these things happening, of course, there's more and more interaction. Burkina Faso has a military government. So I'm situating what I'm about to ask on that. From where you sit, do you know of any infiltration of insurgents, terrorists, if you like, into our end? And do you feel that is also part of what is fueling the conflict in Bawku?
No. And this is a categorical no in capital letters. In 2020, I traveled from one end of the border in the north to the other end, together with two other people, and wrote a document on a conflict development analysis for the northern region, with specific recommendations to multiple institutions as to what ought to be done to bring this under control. In 2022, I did an even more targeted study for the UNDP. That study, which is, available, is on vulnerabilities to extremism in the 5 northern regions. Extensive travel, probably about 2,500 kilometers over 10 days, interviewing people, community leaders, youth, religious leaders, women, visited markets. There was no real sense of fear in any of these communities that I visited. I visited almost all the border regions also. There was no sense of fear, and the report makes it clear. Were there instances where communities felt strangers had come in and were promising goods, were promising social welfare, people that they didn't know, that made them suspicious? Yes. But I think the scale of the challenge is being overblown. And I don't know if people have traveled and put their lives on the line like I have done, visiting these villages.
So just to clarify, Professor Enning, it is not that these elements have never infiltrated our system. I mean, we've had conversations on insurgency activities. They may have come. I remember there was a time when you mentioned that maybe some of these terrorist attacks are not happening in Ghana because, of course, they get resources from here.
Yeah, sure. And I'm coming to that.
So they have come, but it is not on the scale that some may be putting it. That's what you're saying.
It's a business thing. What do they need? They need explosives. They need to come to the mines, some of the mines, to pick it up. They need detonator quartz. They need high-value resources that they can sell. There are gold mines all over the place, not least in Sindhi, Accra Dollar Power. I will repeat this. We are not looking at this properly because it is easier for us to claim it is Kusasis and Mampusis. It is chieftaincy. It is the youth. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. This latest incident, I think one AK-47 was retrieved. Where did they come from? How do they get it? Where are the leakages coming from? Now, if we also take the last 18 months, and that is where the northern Togo to Bawku, onward to Bolgatanga route is useful. How many of these vehicles have been attacked traveling from Senkase to Kusiga or to Kulungugu onward to Bawku and then to Bolgatanga and other places that have been attacked? My argument still is that the unfortunate people caught between this violence, it's not because of extremists, but it's because of criminal networks seeking to challenge, undermine, expand their territory. Okay? We can put all this into the mix and come up with some solutions. But this tunnel vision of ethnic conflict, of chieftaincy struggles about land, blah, 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 that won't take us anywhere.
I see. So looking at everything that has happened so far, everything
No, I didn't say the military infiltration in Bawku is overblown. The extremist infiltration. Now, when you people make these mistakes, you put me into trouble. It's the extremist infiltration that we are talking about. So please, if the man who is typing this has an ulterior motive, it doesn't work with me.
We sincerely apologize. We apologize for that, and it will be sorted out immediately. So
Sure.
let's look at the military in all of this. I am sure, and if we can project the statement from the Ghana Armed Forces, but while that is made ready, we saw the shooting post the gunning down of 3 people who eventually died, with 5 others who ended up in hospital. After that, the military went to some part of Bawku, in Bawku Central to be specific, and then there was that incident with 3 young men killed by our soldiers, with one making a narrow escape. The member of parliament for that area, Mahama Yariga, said these young men had, just before the curfew, been sitting somewhere. They saw these people coming. One took to his heels. The 3 others were taken away and gunned down. The military says it was only returning fire, that they were engaged, and that, in fact, they've issued a warning that if you engage them, they will engage you back with fatal consequences. What do you make of that? Because we've also had some history, even in recent years, of military brutalities. But in this end, the back and forth, what do you make of it? And where do you feel, really, the truth lies?
Where the truth lies, I think, if we are being honest, would need a commission of some sort. Because the MP is making very categorical statements. I think the MC has also said something. The GAF has put up a statement also explaining their side of the story. And I think we saw the youth and we heard them also telling their side of the story. But there's a 5th dynamic. There is a WhatsApp so-called report about this incident that creates an extremely disturbing, picture of whatever took place. My assessment right now is that there are way too many stories and too many interest groups interpreting what has taken place for particular ends. So we would need to take a step back very quickly. And I think we have the institutional framework for this, particularly the National Peace Council, to quickly meet all the parties and to ensure that the truth is put out into the public domain. Why am I saying this? Part of the reason is that we cannot have a situation, and as the youth said, that a critical institution's reputation is tarnished in a way that we don't have the evidence for it. And I think I've said this several times, that although the military is guided by the laws of war and proportional use of force, it is crucial that they are not engaged in a provocative manner. Because in all situations, you and I, everyone has a right to life, and every life must be protected. So because the MP is saying something, the MC has said one other thing, the military itself has said something, the youth are saying another thing, And then there's this WhatsApp document going around. We need to get to the truth. And I think tinkering with parts of the truth or the story and putting it out as the whole will create even more trouble. And that has been the bane of the Bawku crisis whenever it blows up. That we pick different aspects of the problem and overblow it to suit our specific narrow purposes. We shouldn't do that this time around because we are heading towards the tip. And the tip is now very short from a much larger conflagration. So I would suggest, and I think others have said so too, that we need the Peace Council to step in very quickly and to see if we cannot get all parties sitting down, talking, and at least to come out with a narrative that everyone can accept. But right now, as it is, no one knows what the truth is.
I have a quick question for you before I get to the military statement. The different parties we've spoken to, and we'll speak to some of them again, Mahama Yariga, Member of Parliament, Bawku Central, Stephen Yakubu, Upper East Regional Minister, Mr. Zanga, the MCE. I want to believe you've listened to some of the things they have said. And I have also heard some people in the community, Mamprusis and Kusasis, reach out to me personally. Someone reached out, sent me a long list, a tall list of things that he feels, if we're done, of course, ousting the politics could help resolve the matter. Do you feel the political elements in all of this are also fueling or fanning the flame, and that they really need to tone down and get their act together, whether MPP or NDC?
Well, I think the unfortunate part of this thing, this Bawku crisis, has been the extreme politicization of the resolution interventions. So if it's Party A that is in power, their approach to resolving the conflict is different from Party B. But the root of the conflict is the same. And therein lies my argument earlier that when the root of a conflict becomes overlooked, it festers, becomes intractable, then others begin to exploit it for their pecuniary ends. That is what we are seeing in Bawku. So we need to take the politics out of understanding what the problem is, what the intervention options must be, and when there is consensus about the intervention, consensus to pursue that to its legitimate end.
I want you to take a look at this bit from the statement from the Ghana Armed Forces. And I read out, the current streak of violence began on Friday, 12th January 2024. It gives the time with the murder of one Isa Halidu, a 40-year-old Mamprusi. The deceased reportedly attempted rustling 4 cattle at Avengo, a Kusasi-dominated settlement, but was pursued by unidentified gunmen and shot in the head and back. Troops dispatched to the scene retrieved 2 7x62 and 39mm live rounds from the deceased person's pocket. On the night of Friday, 12th January and early hours of Saturday, 13th January 2024, sporadic gunshots were heard at New Station, Daduri and Maziama. On Wednesday, 17th January 2024, about 13:20 hours, unknown gunmen attacked members of the public behind Bawku Divisional Police Station, killing 2 victims and injuring 4 others. Now, we know there were 3 people who actually died and 5 who were in hospital. The deceased victims were of the Mamprusi and Moshi tribe, while the other victims with various degrees of injury were of Bisa, Busanga, and Grushi descent. On the same day, at about 20 hours, unknown assailants murdered one Azuma Al-Hassan, a 47-year-old Kusasi professor at Sokabisi, Bolgatanga. This spawned sporadic gunshots at Bawku later in the night. And the last one, which really got me concerned. Furthermore, on Thursday, 18th January, at about 04:30 hours, unknown gunmen hiding in a valley fired at our troops' position at Avengo. In another development, at about 5:30 hours, same day, a Ghana police patrol team spotted two locals attempting to light up a rocket-propelled grenade bomb at a Goyle filling station in Bawku. The suspects fled upon sighting the patrol team, leaving behind the bomb. Ghana police retrieved the unexploded ordnance and handed over same for safe custody at the 11th Mechanized Battalion magazine at Bazua. So one, the trend, look at the days between the 12th and just a short span of days. Look at the number of attacks, incidents, deaths, assaults. That is one. And two, now you are talking of people with hand-propelled grenades, among others, bombs, literally. I don't know, but this makes me very uncomfortable. I don't know whether it makes you as uncomfortable, and what you think, really, or especially in light of arms proliferation as well, Prozaini.
That doesn't make me uncomfortable at all. I mean, this is the natural projection of what I've been talking about for 20 years. And for me, I sound like a broken record when it comes to small arms. My first baseline survey on small arms, focusing on production, leakages, poor stockpile management, was in 2004, 2005. We did a subsequent one, I think in 2014 or 2015, for which I was threatened and all sorts of things. Look, this will get worse because you know, and I know, that if you want to make a borehole and you even go to Accra Central, you can get these boys to sell you things necessary to make the hole. Okay? So this bomb thing or whatever they call it, there is nothing new about it. But my worry really is the manner in which the victims have been identified ethnically. You see, because if a crisis took place in town X, and because we are an integrated state, we are all mixed in wherever we live, would such a statement have said, he's a Gomoa man, he's an Agona, he's a Fante, he's Hausa? I think it's important, particularly because of the sensitivity of what we are talking about, that whilst recognizing our diversities, ethnic diversity, that we also work towards building a united Ghana in which those who commit crimes and the unfortunate victims must not necessarily be identified by their ethnic affiliation.
Your final words, Prof, especially again in respect of the fact that there are a lot of these arms in civilian hands. What do you think should be the way forward? If I may, if you may just give me a little time. You know, I told you of this gentleman who had sent me some proffered some solutions. In fact, he sent me 10. He talks about the fact that, and I'm not going to mention his name, awareness raising media dialogue with CSOs, identifying and highlighting commonalities, more a whistleblower program, timely prosecutions. He says so far no one has been jailed. Expose the propaganda and fake news, regulate the local and social media, retrieve arms. Those, for example, that were taken in the Bono East region. What happened to those arms, he asks. He talks about sustained media engagement on Bawku and not just the on and off, oh, now we're talking about it and then we're back. Those who intervene must be impartial to build trust. And then he says, we need to set up a youth opportunity center because the youth need alternatives. Instead of exposure to guns, they should be exposed to the Internet of Things. These are some of what I was telling you about, people reaching out to me personally, sharing these with me. What do you think? Those will be the final comments.
No, these are practical, sensible, hands-on implementable things. They don't cost money. Okay? But we seem to have been locked in a situation where whenever we are suggesting any interventions, we first think about the money instead of the practicality and the impact of what must be done. Let me add one more thing, which I've told the people who matter. We know that there's almost a direct correlation between the dry season, people not having anything to do, and the frequency of violence. But we also know that very little investments in pumps, proper seeds, fertilizer will allow people to engage in dry season farming. Dry season farming is fairly cheap. It provides massive employment. It provides, food that we need during that period, and it gets people engaged. Okay, do we have the boldness, the honesty, the drive to implement some of what your contact has said and what I'm saying now? This dry season farming was top of my recommendation in my last UNDP report. It does not cost money. And this is from the youth themselves who feel they've done it before when it was affordable, but now they can't do it anymore because things have gotten a little bit expensive. It can be done if we are interested and we are committed.
Professor Enning, we are immensely grateful for your time with us this morning, and we do hope that at some point we can bring some relief to our brothers and sisters and also forestall any escalation of the conflict to other parts of our dear nation. Thank you, Prof, for joining the conversation.
Thank you very much.
That is Professor Kwesi Enning. He is a security consultant. He provides bespoke services in risk assessment and analysis, as well as forecasting. This has been our conversation this morning on the latest Bawku escalation. But stay with us. When we return after the break, we bring you more on that threat of industrial action among the teachers' unions at the tertiary level. There has been an uptick in that development. We'll bring you more as we engage the stakeholders. We'll be right back on the AM Show.